Welcome to the letter room, where forgotten words return to life and history speaks through private voices. Today we journey to the Pacific front of World War II, where a Japanese soldier wrote a final message of love and duty to his wife. When we think of the Second World War, the Pacific theater is often remembered for its ferocity, the relentless battles fought across islands, jungles, and seas. Japan, at the height of its imperial power, stood as one of the most formidable forces in Asia. By 1943, however, the tide of war was slowly beginning to turn. The Empire of Japan had expanded rapidly across Southeast Asia and the Pacific, but its soldiers now found themselves locked in grueling defensive campaigns, far from home, cut off by Allied blockades and relentless bombardments. It is in this context that we find a soldier named Naoichi Takagi, serving with the 40th Anti-Aircraft Unit on the remote island of Wakde, off the coast of what is now Indonesia. Wakde would later become a battleground of immense suffering in 1944, when American forces launched a fierce assault to reclaim it. But in September 1943, when Takagi wrote this letter, the battle had not yet come. He lived in the liminal space between the calm of anticipation and the storm of violence that was sure to come. For the Japanese soldier, war was not just a matter of orders and strategy. It was bound up with a philosophy deeply rooted in the cultural fabric of Japan, the code of Bushido. Derived from the samurai tradition, Bushido, literally the way of the warrior, emphasized loyalty, duty, honor, and sacrifice. Even though Japan of the 20th century was no longer ruled by samurai, the spirit of Bushido had been repurposed and modernized by the imperial state to bind soldiers to the cause of the emperor. To fight, and if necessary to die, was not simply a military necessity, it was a moral imperative. This code infused the Japanese military with both remarkable resilience and tragic fatalism. Soldiers were taught that surrender was dishonorable, that to give one's life in service of the emperor was the highest form of duty. The ethos of Bushido turned the battlefield into more than a struggle of arms. It became a test of spirit, where personal survival mattered less than fidelity to one's family, community, and nation. And yet, within this framework, soldiers like Naoichi Takagi still carried their humanity, their longing for home, and their love for family. Japanese culture at the time placed enormous weight on the family unit. While the state demanded loyalty to the emperor, the soldier's heart often remained with wife, children, and village. Takagi's letter reflects this tension. He writes of his wife in Oroshi, of rice fields and family meals, of the children he fears he may never see again. It is a voice suspended between the martial obligations of Bushido and the tender bonds of domestic life. He acknowledges the emperor, but the true anchor of his soul is not in the palace of Tokyo. It is in his home, in the laughter of children, and the voice of his wife calling him to dinner. This duality is at the core of Japanese wartime culture. On one hand, there was the collective, the emperor, the empire, the honor of Japan. On the other, the individual, the small circle of family, the simple rituals of everyday life, the longing for ordinary joys. The beauty of Japanese letters from the front lies in this contradiction. They are not merely declarations of loyalty. They are confessions of vulnerability, human attempts to reconcile duty with desire. Takagi's words come from a world where silence was often enforced. Soldiers were expected to show stoicism, to mask fear, to embrace sacrifice without complaint. Yet his letter reveals tenderness and doubt, even as he affirms his willingness to fight and, if need be, to die. This is where Bushido meets reality. The philosophy speaks of honor, but the heart speaks of love. When we read this letter, we are transported not just to the battlefield of Wakde, but into the intimate interior of Japanese culture at war. We glimpse a man trying to live up to the ideals of his nation while clinging to the everyday humanity of husband and father. It is a reminder that even within one of the most rigid military machines in history, the beating heart of family and love could not be silenced. This is the world of 1943 Japan, a nation straining under the weight of global conflict, a soldier caught between the roar of the waves and the roar of duty, and a letter that bridges the vast gulf between war and home.
Wakde Island, September 21, 1943. My dearest wife, as I write to you, the tropical heat surrounds me, and the sound of waves is my only companion. The days here are long, and the nights even longer. I think of you and our 3 children constantly. Your face is etched in my heart. For the first time, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have given me a life worth fighting for, and I carry that love with me into this war. The officers tell us we are defending the Emperor's honor, and I feel the weight of that duty. But my heart aches for home, for the rice fields of Orochi, the laughter of our children, your gentle voice calling me to dinner. I fear I may not see you again, but I push that thought away. My duty is here, yet my soul is with you. Please raise our children with your own hands, as you always have. Teach them to be strong, to love our land, and to honor our family. If I do not return, know that I fought with all my strength for you and for Japan. Keep my letters close and tell the children their father loved them beyond words. I dream of you under the stars. Write to me, my love, if these words reach you. Forever yours, Naoichi.
The letter you have just heard was never sent. Naoichi Takagi, the soldier who wrote it with such devotion and tenderness, never had the chance to place it in the hands of his wife. Less than a year after putting ink to paper, he was swept into the ferocity of the Battle of Wakde in May 1944. The fighting there was brutal, as American forces launched a massive assault to seize the island from its Japanese defenders. Outnumbered, undersupplied, and cut off, Takagi and his comrades of the 40th Anti-Aircraft Unit stood their ground until the end. Most of them never left the island alive. Naoichi was among the fallen, and the letter remained in his belongings, silent, unsent, and unknown to the family he loved. When the battle ended, American troops moved through the ruins of Japanese positions. Among them was a U.S. Navy surgeon assigned to treat the wounded and recover what remained. In the process of clearing shelters and bunkers, he discovered a small bundle of letters and personal effects left behind by the men who had died there. One of these was Takagi's letter. For the surgeon, it was more than a scrap of paper. It was a human voice, intimate and fragile, reaching across enemy lines. He preserved it, carrying it home with him after the war, perhaps as a reminder that even amid the violence and carnage, the enemy was no faceless figure, but a man, a husband, a father. For decades, the letter remained far from its intended home. Like so many artifacts of war, it was a story cut in half, a voice waiting to be heard. Then, years later, it was finally returned to Japan, restored to the family of Naoichi Takagi. This return was not accidental. It was part of the work of the Obon Society, an organization dedicated to reuniting Japanese families with the personal belongings of their loved ones who perished in World War II. The name Obon itself is deeply significant. Obon is a Japanese Buddhist tradition in which the spirits of ancestors are welcomed back home each summer. Families light lanterns, make offerings, and remember those who came before them. The festival is not only about mourning, it is about connection, continuity, and love that transcends time. The Obon Society, founded in Oregon, takes that same spirit and applies it to the legacy of the Pacific War. Its mission is to find Japanese artifacts, flags, diaries, photographs, letters that were taken or left behind during the war, and to return them to descendants in Japan. In doing so, they help heal wounds, restore dignity, and give closure to families who, for decades, lived with silence instead of answers. He had written, "If I do not return, know that I fought with all my strength for you and for Japan. Keep my letters close, and tell the children their father loved them beyond words." These words never reached his wife. Naoichi Takagi was killed in the Battle of Wakde, and the letter remained among his belongings, a silent testament that would not speak until many years later. Its eventual return reminds us that history is not made only of generals and strategies. It lives in the fragile lines of handwriting, in the longing of a husband for family dinners, in the advice of a father to his children, in the love that even death could not erase. This is the work of the Obon Society, to rescue these voices from the dust of war. They recover flags, diaries, and letters, once carried home by American servicemen, and return them to the families in Japan. With each return, decades of silence are broken, grief and remembrance intertwine, and the distance between past and present narrows. And so, when we read Takagi's letter today, we hear more than the words of one soldier. We hear the echo of thousands who dreamed of returning home but never did. His letter is a lantern in the darkness, reminding us that even in the midst of war, what endures most is love. Love powerful enough to light the way for generations to come.